a cult.
I think that's way off because I think there's like 1 billion Catholics.
Well, if you're going to call Catholicism a cult,
It's a cult. I grew up in it.
Okay.
It's 100%. It's just a cult with 1 billion people. I mean,
Well,
whenever you got a guy who dresses like a wizard and he's sitting on a golden throne. And
oh boy,
he's
we're
talking
here,
about
are we?
people. Yeah, I mean but that is why this is a problem. Is that there's many people that live their lives by these ridiculous.
This is the Computer Programming University, and this is another episode of Off Topic Tuesdays. So before we get into the topic of discussion whether religion is a cult, and you're not going to want to miss out on this one because this gentleman that was just speaking has a PhD. Now, this is not an example of the failure of our American education system. I don't know what is. This guy's a PhD. I have no degrees, and I will dismantle his argument, and my statements will be, I dare you to challenge them. I dare you to challenge the statements that I'm going to make, because I'm going to do it the way that it's supposed to be done, the way that they would teach you in universities. I don't know why this PhD doesn't know this, but the proper way to make an argument. And I'm going to talk about the proper way to make an argument as well. And the distinction between what I'm going to do versus what this PhD did is I'm going to present sources and evidence, right? I'm not just going to talk about what I feel and my opinions and my thoughts. I'm going to take a scientific approach. Don't know why this person didn't do it, but we're going to get into it. Before we do that, this is a computer programming channel, so I want to give you guys a quick tip. I'd like to put some quick tips in my off-topic videos. So the tip today is command line foo. So command line foo, as you can see here, is an awesome website that you can go to that can help you to research one-liners. One-liners are what we call a command that you can type in the command line. So just go in your command line in Linux, Unix, whatever, and type in a command that'll do different things, you know, grab a string from a file and then change this word to another word and then add up the line numbers, whatever it is. But it's something that you can do in one line, hence the term one-liners. So a great source to find some one-liners instead of you creating them from scratch, maybe get some inspiration, some ideas, is command line foo. For example, we can just type in the search box netstat. I spelled that wrong. Wonderful, wonderful. The beauty of being live. Netstat. And right away, I get a whole bunch of various commands using netstat. So there's netstat-an, pipe to grep establish, and so on and so forth. And you can see it says graph number of connections for each host. So that's what that does. List all listening ports together with PID. So all these different things are here, these different one-liners, and you can see there's a ranking and people comment on them. Great website, definitely bookmark command line foo. But without further ado, let's begin the off-topic episode of Is Religion a Cult? And there's my phone ringing again.
Ridiculous ideologies that are illogical.
Okay, so I'm gonna challenge you on this.
Protect them from predators and Facebook likes.
I'm gonna challenge you on this.
Please do.
Catholicism is not a cult.
What is the difference between a cult? I had a bit for my act. Let me just.
Sure.
A cult is bullshit, and it's created by one person, and he knows it's bullshit. In a religion, that guy's dead.
Okay. So let me. This is rough territory, but
it's created by one person.
I'm going to challenge you on this.
Please do.
Catholicism is not a cult.
What is the difference between a cult? I had a bit for my act. Let me just.
Sure.
A cult is bullshit, and it's created by one person, and he knows it's bullshit. In a religion, that guy's dead.
Okay. So let me.
Okay, so admittedly, that's Joe Rogan. He's not a PhD. And he did say it was a bit for his act, so it's kind of entertainment value, right? But this guy is a PhD. Let's talk about who this person is. So this is Bret Weinstein. and he's an American biologist and evolutionary theorist. He went to University of Pennsylvania, University of California, Santa Cruz, and I guess he got his PhD from the University of Michigan. So that is who we are listening to. And one of the first things that he said that instantly I'm like, what is he talking about? He says he's opposed to the idea that, well, let's play that back real quick. 1 second.
Okay. So let me, this is...
In person, and he knows, please do.
Catholicism is not a cult.
What is the difference?
Catholicism is not a cult. Okay, so here's where this whole thing went off the rails. From the very beginning of the situation. I apologize. Just one moment. One moment, please. We are live, and make sure my levels are good. With options. Click subscribe, then click the bell. Click the bell because you don't want to miss out on more awesome content that I'll be posting soon right here on this channel. Welcome aboard. Buongiorno. Salut. Vigits. All right, so statement made is that Catholicism is not a cult. Now, the scientific way to have this discussion, the intellectual way, the way that you would expect someone with a PhD to make any argument, would first begin with definition. This video is 27 minutes long. How can you have a debate for 27 minutes long about a word that you do not know the meaning of? Clearly, throughout this discussion, it was made very clear that both of these individuals did not really understand what the word cult means. It is highly illogical to have a debate or any kind of intellectual discussion about a word that you do not know the meaning of. Now, clearly, both individuals thought they knew the meaning of the word, but I would expect that and I believe, I believe he's a professor. To earn his PhD. I believe he is a professor, if I'm not, I might be mistaken on that. Yes, professor and public speaker. So as a professor, so someone who is teaching people in universities, I would expect him to first define the word or be clear on what the word is. Now, even if, you know, he's human, we make mistakes. You know, I'm not gonna, in a discussion, I'm not gonna try to define every word that I'm using. Like I just used the word. I have a fair bit of confidence that I know what the word means and that my audience does as well, right? So there's sort of assumptions that are made in conversation. It would just be highly inefficient and illogical to try and define every single word. However, the key word of the discussion, right, in this case being cult being the key word of the discussion, we should expect to be very clear on that. Now, once again, I guess he felt he knew the meaning of the word. And even if I were to give him that, the instant that he saw that there was a disagreement, you could clearly see that Joe Rogan's perception of what that word means versus Mr. Weinstein's perception were different. So at that point, I would expect as an educator, as a professor, as a PhD, to jump immediately to, let's clarify what cult means. And not from a perspective of what you think it means and what I think it means. This is 2019. We're living in the information age. Why on earth would a professor not look up the word? I can clearly see that your understanding of what this word means differs from my understanding of what the word means. So let's get on the same page. Let's look it up. Pull it up on your phone, on the computer. What does cult mean? Why that's not done by a PhD, I don't know. But here is the word as defined in Webster's dictionary. First definition, a religion. Remember, the topic of discussion was, is religion a cult? First definition begins, once again, a religion. And if we stop at that point, if the definition begins a religion, the definition of cult begins with a religion, clearly that is stating that a cult is a religion. We're only 2 words in. Only 2 words into the definition, and already we're seeing very clear indication that cults are, or religions are cults. Now, before we proceed further, let me address something. Many of you listening who may have religious beliefs or religious backgrounds probably were agreeing with Mr. Weinstein. Because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, comment below, most of you probably have an understanding of what cult means based on usage that you've seen within your experience, right? Your experiences, rather. So, based on the way you've seen people use the word, and based on specific examples of cults that you've seen. So, now if I'm wrong, we'll find out right now. If I'm correct, then what I'm about to say will be true for most of you. So for those of you that were thinking, oh, Catholicism is not a cult, religion is not a cult, for those of you that were thinking that, I'm going to tell you why. And you can tell me if I'm wrong. The reason why you think that is because you have in your own mind connected cults with extreme examples of cults. You're not aware of this. You may not have ever thought about it that way. You just at some point in time accepted this idea, this notion of what a cult is. You've associated in your own mind, so there's the whatever cult means, and there's the extreme examples, and you've connected them in your brain to make them one and the same. So it's not just the cults that you're aware of are extreme versions of cults. What you're aware of, that's what cults are. So a lot of the definitions are when you speak and you say, oh, I don't think that's a cult. A cult is blah, blah, blah. What you're actually doing is not defining what a cult is. What you're defining is what the examples of cults that you're aware of, what they were. I'm pretty sure most of you are doing that. And these are the things that you think about. You think about Jim Jones, right? These death cults and things like that. The term drink the Kool-Aid. You think about devil worshippers. You know, more extreme examples of cults. I'm pretty sure that that is what you're thinking. If you're totally honest with yourself, then I'm pretty sure most of you will agree with what I just said. that your definition of a cult comes from these examples of cults, the extreme examples. And again, in your mind, it's not extreme, right? But this is all you know. Most of you have not spent time researching cults or looking at a lot of cult, like you watching a cult series or whatever. You have these isolated incidents or experiences regarding cults, like, oh, here's a cult. And then you have a memory on, they did this, they did that, they did that. Okay, so that's a cult. Here's another example of a cult that you run into. Oh, okay, so they did that, they did that. And then in your brain, you look at similarities and patterns between the two cults. And in your mind, there's also memories of people talking about cults. And you package that all into your definition. It's your definition of what a cult is. But I'm pretty sure that most of you that were like, whoa, that's not a cult. Most of you did not look up what the word cult means. You did not study cults. You did not look it up. You made an assumption of what cults mean. And the assumption is skewed based on what I just described. But if we look further, we see here that a cult, first definition, a religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious. So an unorthodox religion. So cult being a religion, factual. Cult more specifically being a type of religion. Okay. And if we go further, we can see as far as, and notice the examples, the voodoo cult, the satanic cult. So this specific example, and I guess to be more accurate, the definition of cults that many of you have might actually be accurate to one of the definitions of the word cult. But this word, like many words, has many definitions. But even for those of you who most of what you're thinking is this first definition we just looked at, even for those people, you're still incorrect on some degree, because as we can see here, it begins a religion. Most people would never think that a religion is a cult. That's not something we're taught. That's not something that people speak about. So in our minds, you have the idea of what a religion is. You have an idea of what a cult is, and they're two separate things. So even if your definition of a cult is based on, or what you think the definition of a cult, because you can't have your own definition, right? There's a definition that we all follow. This is what the word actually means. You can try to define it in terms of what you think it means, but it only has, what we see here. So that's definition number one. But again, even if you have adopted something similar, I'm pretty sure the fact that it's a religion part probably escaped you. Now let's go to definition 2. A great devotion to a person, idea, object, movement, or work, such as a film or book. An overwhelming majority of you, I'm pretty sure, didn't realize that the word cult could even be applied to something so trivial, not being the best word, but I think most of you, when you think about cult, you're thinking about, like you said, satanic thing, Jim Jones. Even if you are aware that religions are forms of cults, religions are very formal, right? There's religious texts and ritual and things like that. But were you aware that the word cult can be applied to something that is not on that level, something that is not so formal? Just a matter of, like you see here, it says cult of personality, right? So great devotion to a person, idea, object. So we could debate this topic about whether the followers of Donald Trump might be considered a cult. They certainly exhibit cult-like behavior. And we can do the same thing with the followers of certain celebrities, whether it's, music industry or actors, whatever it is. So, definition number 2. Definition 2 has A, B, and C. B is the object of such devotion. C is a usually small group of people characterized by such devotion. So here you see a reference to size. Number 3, a system of religious beliefs and ritual. So, for those that struggle with the idea of whether a religion could be a cult, there is a definition that is very light on the eyes, very basic, doesn't have a lot of requirements. Simply a system of religious beliefs and ritual. So, Catholicism, is that a system of religious beliefs and ritual? Christianity, is that a system of religious beliefs and ritual? I would think yes. Therefore, by definition, religion is, I don't know if that's correct grammar. Religion is a cult. I'm not sure about that. Religion is a cult. I would say Christianity is a cult. Catholicism is a cult. But I don't know if it's correct to say religion is a cult. I'd have to look that up. That sounds a little strange to me. But there you have it. The next definition is a system for cure of disease based on dogma set forth by its promulgator. Promulgator, that's a new word for me. So there you have it. So one of the big issues I have with this discussion is, again, they're spending 27 minutes debating whether religion is a cult, and they fail to first define what the word cult means. And I don't mean in terms of what they think it means, in terms of, let's be very clear. Let's look it up, see what the actual definition of the word is, to eliminate the potential that either party or both parties are mistaken. And to me, it's foolish. It's anti-intellectual, in fact, because you're spending all this time and thought process and thinking and going back and forth, and I think this and I think that, and that's wasteful. It's like, imagine me having a debate about whether a car is a form of transportation, and I don't fully understand what a car is. And one would say, I have to know that I don't fully understand what a car is, because what if I think I know what a car is, but I don't? Well, again, as I pointed out before, if I'm having this debate about whether a car is a form of transportation, and the person I'm talking to, it seems to be on a different page, it seems like they have a different understanding of what a car is, I would stop right there and let's define what a car is. But not based on what you think it means and what I think it means. Let's get on the same level of accuracy and precision and look at what car means. Not what I think it means, not what you think it means. This is what car means. Now that we're clear on what a car means, let's have a debate about whether it's a form of transportation or not. And in doing so, instead of having a 27-minute discussion, you can have perhaps a 5 or 10-minute discussion. Because one of the main reasons for the length of this discussion is because they both had different ideas of what the word meant. Both seem to be inaccurate. So you're spending time trying to make a point about something that you're not fully clear about, which is, in my opinion, anti-intellectual. Right? Anti-intellectual because one of the components of being anti-intellectual is that you would rather focus on emotions rather than, well, actually, let's pull that up. Let's pull that up. Let's practice what we preach here. So, a person opposed to or hostile towards intellectuals and modern academic, artistic, social, religious, and other theories associated with them. So, doesn't really apply here. A person who believes that that intellect and reason are less important than actions and emotions in solving practical problems and understanding reality. A person who believes that intellect and reason are less important than actions and emotions in solving practical problems and understanding reality. So rather than focusing on intellect and reason, it'd be reasonable to look up what the word means before debating it. The decision was made that, and where's the emotion? Emotion is, I don't know, would you consider belief to be an emotion? Let's see, define emotion. A natural, instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others. Let's see further. The affective aspect of consciousness, feeling, a state of feeling, a conscious mental reaction such as anger or fear, subjectively experienced as strong feeling, usually directed towards a specific object, and typically accompanied by physiological and behavioral changes in the body. So, it is perhaps debatable whether I'm using this word correctly, but the reason why I'm using it is because of that word feeling. I feel that this is what a cult means. Rather than looking it up and being clear on what it actually is, I'm going to talk about what I feel. And that's feel in terms of, I feel like this is a good idea. I feel like that's a bad idea. I feel like Trump shouldn't be president, as opposed to I feel angry, I feel happy, I feel sad. So, correct me if I'm wrong. I open any discussion, but that is what I saw here, and that's why I use the word anti-intellectual. That may not be the best word to use, but that's the best word I could come up with. I welcome you to give me better words to use below. So let's listen to the rest of this video.
In a cult, I had a bit for my act. Let me just,
Sure.
A cult is bullshit, and it's created by one person, and he knows it's bullshit. In a religion, that guy's dead.
Okay. So let me, this is rough territory, but.
For you.
Okay, let's say.
I agree. There's nothing rough about this conversation. What is the difference between what is the difference between a cult and a religion? 5 seconds to Google it and see that cults are religions. Cult is a form of religion.
For me, this is every day.
Let's say, yeah, all right. Let's say Moses comes down the mountain with the tablets.
Oh, that dude.
Okay, I don't know if Moses did come down the mountain with the tablets.
I don't think he did.
Let's say he did.
But okay.
Did he know he was bullshitting people?
Well, do you know what religious scholars actually believe in Jerusalem? Actually believe that was all about now, the whole burning bush.
Tell me.
They believe it was the.
What does it matter whether he knew whether the information he had was accurate or not? That has nothing to do with the definition of a cult. Nowhere in here does it talk about the accuracy of the beliefs or information. I didn't see anything here. Perhaps, let's see, this is not a word I'm familiar with. And I welcome new information and to learn and grow. So rather than make assumptions, let's look it up. 2019. Right? We have this thing called Google. Not being what it purports itself to be, false or fake. That's what I thought that word meant. Just wanted to be sure. Notice the intellectual approach. Even though I had a pretty good idea of what spurious meant, I wasn't 100% sure. So rather than make assumptions, I looked it up. It's very easy. Confirm that I was correct. But again, I see this as a common thing. Another example of a failure of our education system, where I see a lot of people that will spend weeks and months debating something, but won't spend 5 seconds to look it up. I hear some people saying it's because people are lazy, but even that's illogical. I just told you people would rather spend weeks and months debating something rather than spend 5 seconds to look it up. And this is not an uncommon response that someone would say, like, oh, they're lazy. It's speaking without thinking. If you're lazy, why would you choose to expend weeks of time invested in something rather than spending 5 seconds? In most instances, it's much faster to research and look things up than it is to debate without doing that, right? Because without looking it up to be sure, you expend a lot of time dealing with opinions. You feel it's this, I feel it's something else. So now I need to defend my position. Why do you feel it's this? I feel it's this because blah, 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 blah. No, that's not right. It's blah, 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 blah. No, you don't know what you're talking about. Blah, 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 blah. Back and forth, back and forth. I get frustrated, you get angry. You're talking over me, I'm talking over you. So you're expending energy from the emotion, back and forth, and time. Google, space, word, enter. Ah, there it is. Oh, I didn't know that's what that meant. Oh, okay. I guess I was wrong. Now let's go watch Bird Box on Netflix. This episode was brought to you by No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's not laziness because it takes more. The lazy person would look it up. The lazy person who is also logical and intellectual will look it up. See, that's the thing. It's a very, as humans, we can be very illogical. So even as a lazy person, the lazy person would potentially spend a lot of time debating something rather than taking the easy approach to looking it up, because we are very emotional creatures. And emotion leads us into being doing very illogical things. So rather than thinking about, you think something, I think something else, you know what makes sense? Let's look it up. Right? That's logical. That's an intellectual approach. But a lot of people don't have this logical thinking process. They are more emotional. Emotions cloud our ability to, or suppress our ability to think and to analyze things, right? So the emotions sort of take over and take control of us. And it's almost like a puppet master pulling our strings. So I have this feeling about something, and that feeling is going to drive me to do things, right? So in this case, it's driving me to argue. Let's debate, right? That's what my emotions are driving me to do. And I'm so busy just being controlled by my emotions that the intellectual, because it's not that you're not intellectual, it's not that you don't have the capability, but in order for you to tap into that intellectual part of your brain, that analytical part of your brain, you need to actually, disconnect from the emotions and choose to process the information and analyze the information and think. But as long as you are under the control of your emotions, it doesn't matter how intellectual you are. It doesn't matter how smart you may be, because that part of your brain is not being utilized. I don't mean this literally, of course, but I think you get the general idea. So that's how you can find someone who is lazy, who would spend 100 times the amount of time, probably much more than that, on something rather than take the easy route, which is to look it up. In order for you to understand or realize that the easy route is to look it up, you have to think, right? So just like how, let's look at things that a lazy person might do. So a lazy person might be messy, and they actually, since it's this not dealing with something where there's emotion involved or a lot of emotion involved, they actually can think, so it's going to take me at least a couple hours to clean up. Or I can just not clean up and I can have 2 hours to watch TV. Okay, so I'm not going to clean up. Right? Not cleaning up obviously is more efficient. Right? That's an easy decision to make. But when you have a situation where there's an argument and there's emotion involved, you don't get to that thought process part where you analyze, like, okay, wait a minute. Should I debate this thing based on my opinion, or should I look it up? No, you just have a feeling and you're like, oh, no, you're wrong. And you get into it. So you never get to think about what makes sense. What's the easy way out, right? So, and now I got sun in my face. Let's see. Let's continue.
The acacia bush, which is rich.
You've done some hallucinogens.
Oh,
you know,
instead of like this 10 to 15 minute trip, you're gone for a long.
No, you're talking about drugs.
Yeah.
And so when you say Catholicism is a cult, I don't agree, because Catholicism historically must have been delivering messages that caused people to correct their thinking in ways that made them collaborate more effectively, that made them better able to find the opportunities in their environment. I'm not advocating that we should sign up for belief systems that are at odds with our modern environment. But one thing we can say, I believe for sure, is that religions that have stood the test of time did so because their value to the people who believed in them was so great that those that disbelieved were outcompeted. Now, so we...
I disagree with that. Now, that's a separate argument. And in practicing what I preach, what I would do is I would need to do some research to back it up. But because that's not the topic of discussion, I will just give you my opinion without the sources in this case. But the issue that I have with what he said there is he is discounting or not taking into account power. You have way back in history where religion and government were so closely tied. So when you have an authority that has power and control over the people, that power and control can be leveraged to basically push or force the success of the religious ideas and beliefs. So it is not required for the people to be in agreement with, to have appreciation of, or anything of that nature. Fair can be the only thing required to ensure the success of religious ideas. The idea that you might be killed for not following along with certain religious beliefs and ideas. Survival. The desire to survive and to live. That alone can be utilized to force the success of religion. So again, to have that as an argument, we would need to do the research and get into, so that's my position, and I need to back it up with research and evidence. And we'll get into how to make an argument later on in this video, but that's why I disagree with his statement.
we get into trouble in the modern circumstance because we can look at many of...
Oh, additionally, I forgot to mention, so it seems like he's focusing on the first definition, a religion regarded as unorthodox. Now, remember, he didn't think cults were religions, right? So, and as I mentioned before, some people who have the most accurate understanding of what a cult is, it's probably this definition that they're thinking of, but majority of them probably miss this part because, again, most of us culturally have associated cults with the extreme versions. And then culturally, we have a lot of, religious influence in our history. So religion has been taught to us as, this good thing. It's peace and love and all that kind of stuff. So you have religion, which we associate with peace and love, right? And then we have cults, which we associate with, the extreme version. So, death cult, satanic cult, right? That's what we think about. So the two can't be the same, right? This is good, this is bad. So most people who even think about the first definition, they're missing the religion part. They extract that because, again, religion associated with good, cults associated with bad, never shall the two meet. In the minds of most people who don't spend the time to research and look it up and understand what the word actually means.
Of the teachings of any of these ancient religions, and we can compare them to what we learn scientifically and detect that there's something not right.
Can I stop you there?
Sure.
Scientology, is that a cult?
So, and also another thing that it seems like he's focusing on is this spurious part. So if you focus on this definition, then one of the features it mentions is spurious. So false, fake. So he's trying to say that Catholicism is not a cult because based on and notice it says unorthodox or spurious. If he doesn't acknowledge the or, then he's looking at a religion regarded, well, he doesn't even realize it's religion, but whatever. A religion regarded as spurious. And notice it says regarded as. It didn't say actually is. It didn't say a religion that is spurious. It's saying regarded. Right? So once again, let's look at what the word regarded means. Just to be clear, I don't like to look at the Google definition. Let's go into, and I don't like dictionary.com. I prefer Merriam. Attention, consideration, appearance, the worth or estimation in which something or someone is held, a basis of action or opinion, an aspect to be taken into consideration. So I would say due regard should be I would say probably looking at a basis of action or opinion. Might be the worth or estimation in which something or someone is held. The worth or estimation regarded. Is highly regarded as a mechanic. So what did it say? Religion, a religion regarded as a mechanic. Is highly regarded as a mechanic. Is highly regarded as a mechanic. A religion regarded as unorthodox. So I read that as believed to be unorthodox, believed to be spurious. Regarded, a religion regarded as to consider and appraise equally from a particular point of view. To consider and appraise and appraise. To consider and appraise. It's considered to be. I think that's probably what we're looking at. Considered to be. To pay attention to show respect or consideration for. To look at, Yeah, I think that's to consider and appraise, usually from particular. So considered and appraised as unorthodox or spurious. So I think he's focusing on whether, that doesn't make any sense either, whether the information is accurate or not. But he himself, in another video, so let's look at what he said here.
No, I wouldn't call myself an atheist at all.
Fascinating. What are you?
Well, let me.
First of all, yet again, illogical. He does not consider himself to be an atheist, but he does not believe in God. He very specifically said in another video that heaven doesn't exist. Which, I guess, to be more accurate, atheist may not actually be the correct word, because atheists don't state that God doesn't exist. They state that they don't believe God exists, which is different. To say God doesn't exist is to say that you know God doesn't exist. To say that you don't know or don't believe that God exists is to state that you lack proof or evidence of such. Right? So I don't believe that any one of my subscribers is related to Donald Trump. Right? That's highly unlikely, but it is possible. I can't challenge it. I don't know who my audience, who they are related to, right? So I don't know that none of my audience members are related to Donald Trump, but I don't believe it. And I have no evidence to suggest that that is the case, right? So that's a lack of belief. That would be atheism. But if I said that no one in my audience is related to Donald Trump, that is to suggest that, or to imply that I know everyone that subscribe to me, and I know all their relatives, and I can confirm that none of them are related to Donald Trump. That's a big difference. Not believing and saying that something doesn't exist. Now, if we look up the word atheist, so I may be incorrect on this one, but I'm more than willing to be atheist, spell it correctly. A person who does not believe in the existence of God or any gods. One who subscribes to or advocates atheism. So does not believe, right? Lack of belief is not basically the same thing as knowing, right? I know that this is not a cat, right? I wouldn't say I believe this is not a cat. I know this is not a cat because I know what a cat is, and this is not a cat, right? Very different from I don't believe this is half full, right? I know it's not a cat, but I only believe that it's not half full, right? That's my belief. I can confirm by looking, but right now I don't have evidence to prove whether it's half full or not. I mean, I'm making an estimation based on the weight, but I have to look inside to be sure. So I have a lack of belief that it is more than half full, but I'm not saying it as a fact. I would need to check it and measure it to be able to say, I know it is or it isn't, right? Very different thing. So I'm not sure what the word is for someone who, let's look that up. Word for, how do you state that? Belief that God does not exist. For knowing God does not exist. It's agnostic. what is the correct word? So there's, what is atheism? So atheism is not an affirmative belief. To be clear, atheism is not disbelief in gods or denial of gods. It is a lack of belief in gods. So what is the word? If you lack an active belief in gods, you are an atheist. So by that definition, he'll be considered an atheist. But I'm not sure what I think there's a word for let's see. Words for belief in God. And let's put atheist. I keep spelling that wrong. Agnostic. I'm not sure what the other one would be. Let's look at this one. Other related terms. Gnostic, atheist, theist, Gnostic, Gnostic, atheist, Gnostic, theist. 100% certain there are no. So there's a Gnostic, Gnostic, atheist, 100% certain there's no God or gods. Agnostic atheist lacks belief in God or gods, but doesn't claim to know with 100% certainty. I thought there was a word. Let me look that up. So let's look up Gnostic atheist. Gnostic atheist. Gnostic atheist. Well, there's a wiki page for that. Let's add some more words in there. "17 kinds of atheism." That should be interesting. This is more along the lines of what I was looking for. Difference in knowledge. Difference in affirmation. Difference in knowledge. A Gnostic atheist not only believes there's no God or gods, he also claims to know there are no gods. Agnostic atheist doesn't believe in gods but doesn't claim to know. Difference in affirmation. A negative atheist merely lacks a belief in gods. He's also called a weak atheist or an implicit atheist. A positive atheist not only lacks belief in gods but also affirms that no gods exist. He's also called a strong atheist or explicit atheist. That's interesting. Difference in scope. Denies the existence of all gods, so a broad atheist. Difference in assessed rationality. Difference in openness. Difference in action. Difference in religiosity. Practices religion but does not believe in gods. That's interesting. So Gnostic atheist might be the word we're looking for. Theist, atheist, Gnostic. So that's what it is. It's so he said heaven doesn't exist. So he sounds like a Gnostic atheist, because he never mentioned anything about God could be real, but he has no proof of such. Let's listen to what he says.
What are you?
And the other question is a Gnostic atheist an atheist, right? Is Gnostic atheist a type of atheist, so a subset of atheism? That's another thing. So if Gnostic atheist is a form of atheism, then if you're a Gnostic atheist, then you are an atheist. atheist is just not being specific in what type of atheist you are, but you are an atheist, right? So if that's the case, then he would be an atheist. And to further clarify, you need to specify what type of atheist he is.
Well, let me lay it out this way. I do not believe that there is anything supernatural going on in the universe. However, I do believe that the structures that constitute such belief systems are there for a reason. And
that's kind of in my opinion, a disappointing choice of words for someone who's a professor and a PhD. So he says,
and that understanding those reasons is very important. Those reasons and that understanding those systems are there for a reason.
I cannot imagine any circumstance where a religion would exist for no reason. It's kind of like saying I'm not perfect, when it's well known that no one is perfect. So what is the point of stating that you're not perfect? Stating that religion is there for a reason. It just seems it's a non-statement. I mean, of course it's there for a reason. I mean, you have something that's existed for so long, people are following it, and it escapes my mind how this could be something that's just for no reason. I mean, even if it's based on something about the human experience, like the way our minds work, or genetics, or whatever it is, that would be the reason, right? Maybe I'm not smart enough, but I can't see how religion could exist without a reason. But anyway.
And that understanding those reasons is very important, especially at a moment of transition, because to the extent that
I would rather, if I were to make this statement, instead of saying these things, you believe these things exist for a reason, which is a non-statement, I would just start with, I believe that it's important to understand the reasons why religion might exist, or something like that. Like, the second part is where he would start. That first part is unnecessary and pointless.
Because to the extent that atheists tend, because to the extent important, especially at a moment of transition, very important, especially at a moment of transition, is very important, especially those reasons is very important. Understanding those reasons is very important, especially at a moment of transition, because to the extent that atheists tend to want to throw out those structures wholesale because they're predicated on what they see as pure fiction, we are in danger of throwing out mechanisms that are essential to our survival that we don't yet even understand how they function. So my interest is in making sure that as we recognize that we may have outstripped the wisdom contained in many ancient traditions, that we haven't done so fully. And what we've really failed to do is to catalog what wisdom exists there, so that as we grow into some new phase.
I don't know, it's there's something bizarre about this gentleman. I feel like he's not being honest with himself or honest with us. He states he doesn't believe in heaven and things like that, but then it seems like he is some form of apologist or something. It's like he wants to defend the concept of religions, or the benefit of religions while not being religious himself and not believing in what religions teach. It's kind of bizarre. It's really, really bizarre. Someone who discounts religious beliefs would generally discount the benefits of those beliefs, right? You believe these beliefs are based on falsehoods, then why would you want to support okay. Is it possible that religions have benefits? Of course. Why not? And certainly, I believe certain religions have beneficial concepts and ideas. Love your neighbor, for example. Having something to believe in terms of the afterlife can help people deal with things like death, facing death. So I can understand that there might be, I can understand that there are benefits. However, that's not a reason to support religion when you don't believe in what religion teaches about. Because any benefits within religion can be extracted and exercised in a secular form. Right? Love thy neighbor is not a concept that is unique to religion. You don't have to be religion or even spiritual to adopt the philosophy of loving your neighbor. Right? So why would someone who doesn't believe in what religion teaches us want to support that there are benefits there from the religion rather than, and again, this is someone who is a professor, PhD, rather than to highlight the positive ideas that exist in religion but are not necessarily a product of religion? Why not highlight those ideas and say that these ideas can be beneficial to humanity? Right? The idea of having community, social groups. Why would someone like this not identify that I don't believe in religion, but I do believe that there are certain positive ideas that can be found in religion that I think are beneficial to humanity, right? But that do not require the dogma that comes with religion, right? I just don't see. It's sort of like, let's say you're in the desert and there are these trucks that go by. Some of these trucks are filled with snakes, dangerous, poisonous snakes. And then you have other trucks that do not have snakes, right? And I'm making an argument about the benefits of the snake trucks. I believe there's a benefit to snake trucks because they do have water in there. So as long as you don't get bit by any of the poisonous snakes, you can get water. Water is very important. We need water. But there's other trucks in abundance that also provide water, minus the negatives that come with the snake trucks. So what is the need to defend and say, well, hey, the snake trucks do have a benefit? Sure, they have water, but we don't need those trucks to get water. We have other sources of water. We don't need religion to adopt the positive tenets and ideas that come from within religion. We can have them in a secular form. So this defense of religion is kind of illogical and pointless for someone who doesn't believe in what religion teaches, unless you're dealing with someone who is maybe having a crisis of what they believe to be true. It's almost like someone who the logical side of them discounts religion and all these things. It doesn't adhere to scientific principles and evidence-based thought process. But that emotional human side, that seeking of meaning in life and you know, why are we here, and fear of death, that desire for there to be more, puts him in this bizarre situation where it's like, oh, I don't believe in religion and heaven, but religion might actually have benefits. Right? I just don't see any need to defend religion for someone who has the beliefs that this guy has. It's not really logical, doesn't really make sense unless there's some kind of a conflict that he's having that he may not even fully be aware of or have taken the time internally to analyze and process and acknowledge. But something doesn't really add up to me. It doesn't really make much sense.
Early to tell.
So he says it's too early to tell whether Scientology is a cult. Again, doesn't really seem to be clear on what the definition of a cult is.
Okay, but let's stop.
Well,
because
but
we
hold
know
on.
the guy who created it.
Well, we do, but we all, so let me drag you back.
Okay.
So, by the way, I'm very uncomfortable with Scientology and what it does. But the problem is, as Scientology itself points out, if you looked at the inception of something like the Catholic Church, you might be equally troubled.
Sure. Which is why I think they're both cults.
Well, but let's be.
That's actually a very good point. Do too much digging into the origins of the world's religions. And the more digging you do, I'm assuming the less you will embrace them. So he's putting a connection. So Scientology currently, by most people, seems like, whoa, what is this? But we adopt other religious ideas. But if you look at the origin of those religions and you look at Scientology currently, might give you similar feelings. Good point.
Be careful about that.
Okay.
So
What do you think a cult is? What do you think a cult is?
well, I think a cult is.
What do you think a cult is? Why do we want to know what he thinks a cult is? Look it up. Let's be clear.
The predatory version. It is tapping into people's natural tendency to believe in what I call metaphorical truths. And
Where in the definition does it talk about, I guess he's talking about like manipulation. Where does it say that here? He's probably doing exactly what I said people do. He's not defining the word cult. He's defining specific cults, right? Things that he's seen or labeled as cults in the past. What's the pattern? What's the pattern? You know, they all seem to be A, B, and C. That's now the definition of what a cult is. I think that's what he's doing.
and it is using it very often to extract resources from them.
Like the
Cynical.
Catholic Church.
Well, no.
Where in the definition does it say anything about extracting resources? Where's he getting that from? Once again, looking at existing cults and making an analysis of what they are, what he's observed, and creating his own definition in his head. Very anti-intellectual approach, disappointing for a professor and a PhD.
No, not like the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is so long-standing, and the population that has, I guess what I would say is...
Is he making an argument from popularity? what relevance does it, what relevance is it that how long they've been around? Again, I refer you back to the definition. What in the definition supports any relevance to how long religions have been around?
Well, no, not like the
No?
Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is so long-standing, and the population that has, I guess what I would say is if a population succeeds by believing in these things, then cult is not the correct.
I think you and I.
Where is he getting this idea? Again, we know where he's getting the idea because he's arguing for something that he's not clear on what it means, right? So he's trying to defend ideas and opinions rather than facts. The proper way to make an argument, you start with your position and you defend it with evidence, right? But his whole conversation is anchored to his belief and his opinion. And he's defending that. Now let's take a look at how arguments are made. So this is from the University of North Carolina. How to make an argument. Make a claim. Provide evidence. Counter argument, audience, critical reading, works consulted. Do not stop with having a point. You have to back up your point with evidence. The strength of your evidence and your use of it can make or break your argument. Where is the evidence? No evidence was presented, no sources, simply opinions, emotions, feelings. Another breakdown. Making an argument. Primary source. What is the source? Letters, diaries, government documents, an organization's meeting minutes, newspapers. Secondary sources. Evidence. State your thesis. Quick background, confirmation, lay out the evidence that supports the position you wish to defend, assembling all the supporting evidence, evidence, argument, claims, reasons, evidence. I believe that religion is not a cult because cults are such and such, and religion is something else. The evidence is, if you look in the definition of what the word cult means, it states that cults are X, Y, and Z. But if we look at what religion is, it's defined as GBS. These two things are not the same, so therefore religion cannot be a cult. That's an argument.
And I have different terms. We're using different definitions of the word cult then.
But let me.
Exactly. So why, upon hearing that, why is he still not saying, you know what, let's look it up? Why is a professor continuing to engage in this conversation without doing the research?
Okay,
There's a very interesting comparison. So Joseph Smith, who started the Mormon Church, had a competitor.
14.
Right. He had a competitor at the time. There's a book called The Kingdom of Matthias, right, about his competitor at the time. And to me, the two looked equally plausible, the story that they were selling. Now, Matthias never had more than 30 followers, and his religion died out, and Joseph Smith won, and the Mormon Church is obviously a real thing. But these sets of beliefs are advanced by somebody, whether those somebodies are cynical.
Again, on and on and on and on and on, trying to defend his beliefs, his ideas, his opinions.
When they do it, or whether they are earnest. I think many of these, the ones that we have that have lasted for long periods of time, have been advanced by somebody who was, in one way or another, conscious or not, DMT or not, tapped into something that, when delivered to other people, actually constituted a kind of insight. Now,
as opposed to being a con man.
Right.
Okay. And so the origins of the Catholic Church most likely came from some desire for order and a scaffolding of how to behave and to give people rules and structure for how to get through this life with the most amount of positivity and love. And by disciplining them and having these grave punishments being held over their head, burning in the fires, the pits of hell, if they decide to have sex with another man, or wear two different types of cloth, or whatever the other silly things that were in the Old Testament. By doing this, what they've essentially tried to do was offer people structure.
No, it's not really structure. It is
Very good points made.
Is an analog for truths that can't be spoken literally because nobody knows how to phrase them. So let's deal with the church on the one hand and Moses on the other.
Okay.
Moses is obviously important in Jewish history. If Moses ate some DMT from the acacia bush,
I think it was smoke.
Oh, he smoked it.
That's why the whole thing of the burning bush.
Okay.
That's
So let's say he smoked it. Let's say he was super savvy and far-sighted, and obviously he didn't know anything about molecules.
Right.
But suppose that he had some ancient model of something, and there must have been something in that plant that caused crazy things to happen. Let's suppose he didn't believe that he had contacted God, or that God had contacted him, but he woke up from the thing and was like, wait a minute, I know what these people are doing wrong. I'm going to write it down and tell them came from God.
Right.
Is Judaism now a cult?
I think they're all cults. I think all ideologies are cults.
I'm not sure where he was going with that argument.
I don't know. I don't think there is any one person who wrote, first of all, when you're dealing with Christianity, you're dealing with translations, right? Or Judaism. You're dealing with like ancient translations of languages that aren't even spoken anymore.
Right.
And you're also dealing with an oral tradition of who knows how many years before it was ever bothered to be written down. But,
right.
But written down by people. And then people decide what stays in and what doesn't. They change the rules. Like the priests used to be able to marry. Priests in the Catholic Church, the Pope used to have wives.
Sure.
They ran armies. I mean, this is clearly something that human beings have a hand in manipulating and changing, and they do it for the benefit of the structure itself.
Well,
they're not doing it for the benefit of the human beings that are a part of it. They're doing it for the benefit of the structure itself.
Oh, that I don't agree.
What's in what case? With like the money and the amount of power?
I'm not saying you don't have corruption in all of these structures. Okay. You do. But I am saying that there is this is exactly parallel to what we were talking about before. There is the predatory version, which I would call a cult.
Right.
And there is the...
Why is a cult predatory? First of all, you have this definition, and even this definition, fake, fraud. I guess spurious is maybe what he's referring to.
The earnest version, which I would not call a cult. Now, I'm very uncomfortable with any of these things governing policy in the present because none of them have a literal relationship with reality that allows them to deal with the fact that we've got all these new problems for which there's no religious wisdom.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll leave you with this question. Something else to ponder. So words have multiple definitions. So if there's a debate about what a word means, how do you deal with the context of which definition you are referring to? Right? Because a cult doesn't have to involve anything that's unorthodox or spurious. Right? There's a definition that doesn't require that. So are you inaccurate to talk about a cult being fake or fraud when there's definitions that do not include that? I would say it's not inaccurate because there is a definition that does require spurious, unorthodox. And if that's the definition you're referring to, then you're accurate in saying that it's spurious. However, if the conversation is about whether something's a cult or not, I would say you'd have to assess all definitions. The question would be, is there any definition of a cult that applies to religion? Right? If any of these definitions applies to religion, then religion is a cult. Cult by which definition? That's a valid question. And you can say, hey, here's a definition that it applies. This is the basis of my argument that religion is a cult. Or this is the basis of my argument that religion is a cult. Or this is the basis of my argument that religion is a cult, right? So getting into the details, yeah, point out which definition you're referring to. But if there's any, then it's accurate to argue that religion is a cult. Is there any definition of a cult that applies to religion? Yes? Okay, religion's a cult then. For further clarity, show your evidence. Show the definition that applies to your argument. Those are my thoughts. This is Computer Programming University, where I usually talk about computer programming, but on Tuesdays we do off-topic episodes. Today's episode, something that I just ran into online, and I wanted to talk about it and share it with you guys, and that is how this episode came to be. If you like this episode, if you would like to see more, click on the like button, subscribe, click on the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. And if you certainly want to learn about programming like Python and also shell scripting in Linux, then definitely subscribe to this channel, and I will see you soon.
Click subscribe, then click the bell. Click the bell because you don't want to miss out on more awesome content that I'll be posting soon right here on this channel. Welcome aboard. Buongiorno. Salut. Vigets. Bienvenidos. Hasta luego, todos. I'm so excited that you've decided to join the team so we can learn together, grow together, and achieve our dreams. Let's do it. See you soon. Grazie. Learning, learning, learning. We gonna do some learning. We're gonna learn.
Subscribe, I'm telling you.